Hi, this is Mindy Lighthype for Drawing the Beauty of Nature, and I want to introduce you to some of the pen and ink supplies that I use in my practice. I'm going to start with a short historical overview. And what we have here are that dip pens basically are anything that is dipped into a solution for mark making. It's not like what we have in our normal cartridge where the ink flows out. The pen actually has to be dipped into the ink and then written or marked for mark making. So what's happening is that you have reeds. Reeds were used, they were made of bamboo, sticks, and stones, and different anything that people could find in a primitive society. Later on, they began to use bird feathers, and those were considered quill pens. So they were made from ducks, from geese, swans, and crows. So the larger the feathers, the more rigid they would be. But also with that, because of the configuration of the actual quill itself, which is the center part of the feather, the nibs were very flexible, which would allow for the beginnings of calligraphy. Then also there was the creation of glass pens, and those were blown by glass makers, and they were originated in Venice, Italy, and they're still used today. Also, then as man progressed in industrial uses, they started creating metal nibs, and some of those nibs are made from stainless steel, bronze, copper, gold, chrome, and they offer different flexibilities depending on the shape of the nib and the length of the tines and how much pressure you put on them. So a lot of times you'll hear like the word crow quill or dip pen. They can be used interchangeably, and so you just want to be mindful that there's a huge range, and there's also a range that comes in with calligraphy. The type of nibs that we're going to be using will be metal nibs, and I'm going to introduce you to some of my favorites and my recommendations for people that are just beginning out. The first pen that I'm going to introduce you to is the Takahawa. It is considered what they call a comic nib. It comes from Japan, and the pen holder is really nice. It comes with two separate little openings so that you can use a cylindrical round nib, and you can also use the standard nib. So what you're seeing here in the middle is the standard nib, which is called the G Chrome nib, and then there's a mapping nib. You can see the difference. One is much larger and the other one is smaller. They both are flexible, and this is something that people use very often as beginners. And so I highly recommend both nibs, and there's resources for you. The other option is to go with what's considered a speedball. Speedball has been around for a really long time, and I'm not really sure that the quality of their nibs are as good as the Japanese brands, but at the same time, it is affordable. And if you're looking to get a variety of different types of nibs to try out, this little sample pack that I have showing you here has 6 different pen nibs, and it requires 2 different types of holders, and it comes in this pack. And it's really super affordable. So it's also something that you might want to try because everyone is different, and depending on the amount of pressure that you put, some nibs are really flexible and will give you very heavy lines and could be difficult for you to handle. If you're heavy handed, you could get ink blobs, or you may want to have a finer line. So this might be a good sampling for different types. The next thing that you're going to want is to get ink. Now, ink, basically, you can see that there's carbon. You want the blackest ink because if you're going to be doing it for reproduction, you want to really not have any gray tones. If you do create gray tones, it'll be done in the spacing of how far apart your lines are. But for surface design and for information like that, having the blackest line is going to be the best. I also recommend that you purchase waterproof. If for some reason you decided that you would like to put some watercolor in with your designs, if you do not have a waterproof ink, you're going to end up with it smearing and bleeding because it will reconstitute when you put watercolor onto the paper. So here are 2 brands. One is Higgins and the other one is made by Speedball. And they're both excellent inks to start out with. As you can see, they open up and the opening is wide enough for you to put your dip pen in the into the inkwell to go ahead and create your designs. The next thing I want to talk about is paper. There are many different types of papers that are on the market, and it can be really daunting if you're going to a store or whatever, and you'll see like there's 4,000, or if you go to an online internet store, there'll be 4,000 different types of paper, and it's really kind of confusing as to what you might want. So here I'm showing you two different papers. Both of them are called Bristol. Now the surface of the Bristol is smooth. And what you're looking for is a paper that has no texture or what we call tooth on it. What happens is that when you're doing ink work, you want the ink lines to be crisp, which means you want them to sit on the surface of the paper rather than them bleeding into the paper and being absorbed. So if you have sort of, undulations of texture, the nooks and crannies will fill up with ink, and some papers are very fibrous, which means that they could actually feather out, which is called wicking, and you will not get very crisp lines. So by working on a Bristol or a vellum surface, that's going to ensure that you can do that. Strathmore has a lot of different Bristols out there. The one that I'm showing you here with the yellow cover is considered a 300 series. It's the least expensive. It's considered student grade, but it also will work. They also have a series, this is series 300. They also have 400 and 500. So you can choose the caliber of how much you want to spend on a paper, but the 300 will be just fine if you're just starting out. And as I said, you want to make sure that you get Bristol. Fabriano is another, it's an Italian company, and they make excellent papers, and they also have a Bristol smooth surface. So these are two possibilities that you can use for your beginning work and any kind of design that you want to do in pen and ink. The one that you'll be seeing me demonstrate on is something that's really different. It's basically film. It's a drafting film. It's called Mylar, and the company is named Graphics, and they make a product which is called Duralar. Duralar is a frosted film, and it looks very much like tracing paper. But the thing that's really lovely about it is that you have the ability of being able to do a drawing on a piece of paper, place it on the top. The opacity, or actually the translucency of this, allows you to ink right on top of this surface. And because it's smooth, it has a wonderful, wonderful appearance. The ink glides beautifully over the top of it. And I also use it extensively when I do colored pencil work. So I can combine colored pencil along with the ink work on it, and it produces some really beautiful results. You can also work on the back of it. So what's interesting is that if you wanted to have a paler line, or you wanted to work on something on the back, you could flip it over. It's double-sided. So this is what I'll be demonstrating with. It's a little bit tricky to work with. The paper's a little bit easier, but at the same time, I wanted you to know that this is my preference when I work in pen and ink. The next thing that you're going to want is to purchase some tracing paper. I work on what's called tracing vellum. This is by Canson. It's called Vidalian, and it's a thicker, heavyweight tracing paper. A lot of the designs that I do, I overlay different designs on top of each other, and I reuse my work often. So what happens is if I just use regular tracing paper, a lot of times it's not quite as it kind of is a little ripply. It's more like tissue paper, and I find that it doesn't stay over a long period of time. It's not acid free, which means that it gets warped and it begins to crinkle and it rips easily. So I've invested for my business. I use this tracing vellum. And as I said, you can use any kind of tracing paper, but it does tend to rip a little bit more than this paper that I'm recommending. So again, if you find that you really want to keep your drawings for a longer period of time, this is a great paper that I use extensively, and I really, really recommend it. One of the other things, and again, this is kind of an optional little thing here. It's called a chamois cloth. And when you're inking, a lot of times you have ink that maybe gets on the outside or it gets on the handle, or you also need to clean your nibs after you're doing your ink work. You can't let ink dry on the nib because it will become unusable. So if you have the desire, you can get a little chamois cloth. And what it is it's just a piece of suede. A lot of times people will ask me, well, can I use a paper towel, or can I use, a t-shirt or a terry cloth towel? And one of the reasons why I suggest the chamois cloth is that it is smooth and it doesn't have fibers in it. So sometimes if you're trying to just wipe off your nib, you can actually take fibers from um, your t-shirt or for your terry cloth or whatever, and it'll get in between the tines and it'll make the ink be difficult to come out. Whereas the chamois does not have that, and it just makes for a cleaner surface. You can use a paper towel, you can use a terry cloth. You just want to make sure that you just do not get any fibers in that pen nib, because it just won't work. So cleaning the nib is something that's really important for maintenance. The last thing that I have in this little presentation is that there's some other drawing supplies that I think that you will need for this. You're going to need an HB or a 2B pencil, and those are softer drawing leads, and that's going to help you in your drawing of your composition. We're going to be practicing doing thick and thin lines, and if your pencil is a little softer, it allows you to create more pressure to make a fatter line or a thinner line. You also are going to want to get some artist tape, and that's a low tack tape. My recommendation is you do not use masking tape. Masking tape will adhere to your paper, and when you try to peel it off, it will rip the paper and you'll be really unhappy. So the best bet is to get an artist tape. It's a low tack tape, and it's great to have when you're doing design work. Also, the X-Acto knife with a number 16 blade is something that you would probably benefit from. Sometimes we make mistakes, and especially if you're working on the Duralar, there's a way of scraping off the mistake, and then you don't have to worry about it. You can also, this is kind of an optional thing, you don't really need it. And the number 16 blade is what you're seeing down here. It's a little bit different shape than what we're normally looking at. And in the supply list, there's a really affordable kit that has a whole bunch of different blade sizes, but my favorite is the number 16. And in the videos in the future, I show you how I use it. Also, a good pencil sharpener is also recommended just to keep your pencils sharp. I find that when I'm trying to do details, it's really important for me to have a sharp pencil. And the pencil sharpener that I'm recommending is the Rapesco 64. And it really is a great pencil sharpener because it gives you a super fine point without eating the pencil. I used to have some electric pencil sharpeners, and it was like as soon as I would put the pencil into the thing, into the hole, it would just eat. I would watch it eat my pencil, and it was just, there goes $1 or $2 down the drain. And this just shaves it off enough and gives you an excellent point. So these are my recommendations as a beginning person going into pen and ink work. And I think that, if you decide that you really like it, there are other resources that you can go to that I've put in your supply list. And I hope that this has been really beneficial and informed you so that you can get started drawing the beauty of nature using a dip pen. This is Mindy Lighthype, and I'll see you in the beginning lessons where we're going to start doing some leaf rubbings. Very exciting. So I'll see you soon. Bye.